Sting? It's working. Okay. Good morning and welcome to the home of Unitarian Universalism in Central Washington. My name is Pat Whitfield and I serve on the worship committee. I am a greeter and I sing with the choir. And I am, as I just said, also the celebrant for today's service. If you're a visitor this morning, we are so glad that you are here. This morning, we welcome every person of goodwill, just as you are. However you get around, whomever you love, whatever body you inhabit, whatever your age, you are welcome here. We invite everyone to join us for coffee hour in this sanctuary or in the Zoom room right after the service. Now, I ask all of those of you who are in the sanctuary to turn around and wave to our friends and family on Zoom. The camera is over the door there at the exit door. Good job. Now I think they feel they're welcome. Now take some time to greet the people around you, especially those that you don't know well. All right. You're a very social group, and that's nice during this holiday season. Before we continue with worship, I want to make sure you know about any of the announcements that are on the screen, but also one announcement that is in your program, and you can double check it after I've shared it. But this is the Adopt a Family, and it's in your program. It says CUUF has committed to support 7 families this year. We would like an individual family or group of people from our community to adopt a needy family for Christmas. This would involve providing gifts and food, and you'll be provided with 2 lists. First, the wants of the family or their needs, including gender and size. As an example, last year the family requested school clothes for the 2 children, a durable work coat for the father, and shampoo for the mom. Yes, shampoo. Second, a grocery shopping list for Christmas dinner. And if you, your household, or a group of friends want to contribute, contact Jerry Bailey via text at 206-283-6870 or email at jbailey@mac.com. And in case all those words washed over you, that information is also posted in the vestibule. So you don't have to have a photographic memory to remember how you can participate in this. Okay. It's important to take some time every Sunday to acknowledge the story of the land where we gather. We are within the homeland of the Piscosa, where they live for generations upon generations as stewards of this land. The Piscosa people still live here. However, the United States government has broken its agreement with the Piscosa. The government stole the land and water known as the Wenatchee Fishery, which was ceded to the Piscosa. The U.S. used fraudulent surveys, indifference, and intentional violations to transfer the fishery to colonists and corporations. The Piscosa continue their traditions and seek to have all their rights recognized, and we have committed to stand with them and support their efforts. Now, please rise in body and spirit to sing our first hymn. Okay, and the song Light One Candle can be found in the gray hymnal as number 221. It is a Hanukkah song, sort of, but it is also a radical anti-war, pro-civil rights song. The lyrics commemorate the War of National Liberation fought by the Jewish people, led by the Maccabees, against the Seleucid Greek Empire from 167 to 141 BCE, a war described in the books of the Maccabees and commemorated by the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah. Okay.
Called worship now, and then we do light candles, chalice lighting.
Why is that not in my script?
So after this verse.
Oh, okay, its lyrics were there. All righty.
So like that. Chalice
Okay.
lighting and then, sorry.
Your turn.
pieces we have to sort around. The incomparable Unitarian preacher Reverend James Luther Adams said, "I call that church free which enters into the covenant with the ultimate source of existence, that sustaining and transforming power not made with human hands alone. This covenant with the sustaining and transforming power is the charter, the responsibility, the joy of worship in the face of life as well as death. It binds together families and generations, protecting against the idolatry of any human claim to absolute truth or authority. I call that church free, which in covenant with the divine community-forming power brings the individual, even the unacceptable and troubled, into a caring, trusting fellowship that protects and nurtures their integrity and spiritual freedom. This is a pilgrim church and a servant church on an adventure of the Spirit. Its goal is the prophethood and the priesthood of all believers. The prophethood for the liberty of speaking truth, and the priesthood for the ministry of healing. Let us find unity in diversity in the Spirit that makes all things new as we worship together as members and friends and allies of this free fellowship."
All around the world, Unitarian Universalists use the symbol of the flame in a chalice to represent love and truth, shining in a gathered community. Please join me in reading the unison words, and then we will light the chalice flame. For those of you on Zoom, if you have your chalice with you, please join me now in lighting it. If you haven't got a candle, you can always cup your hands to make a chalice. Okay. Now, may we light now candle, inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, and to serve the spirit of freedom. Okay, now there will be a slight change in the sequence of the program because we will light the menorah after the story is read. So, children, I see several children here. If you'd like to be able to see the pictures in the book better, please come up to the front. You don't have to, but it would be nice if you could come close and then you could see the pictures while I read the story. Testing, good. Okay. Do I need to hold the mic for you? That would be very helpful. That way I can. Okay. This book is called The Story of Hanukkah. But what we're going to have now is the menorah lighting. This year, the Jewish Holy Week on Hanukkah begins on the evening of December 25th. In households across the world, as the sun sets, the leader of each family, often the mother, will recite these words: Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, metek ha'olam, shehecheyanu, v'kiyamanu, v'higyayanu, lasman haset. Or, blessed are you, source of all, who has given us life. You sustain us and have brought us to this very moment. They used the shamas, or servant candle, to light the other 8 candles. Okay, now we will proceed to light the other 8 candles. Verse 1, blessed are you, and we cherish with wonder each thing arising from the order of the universe, which binds us together with all of nature, gives us life, sustains us, and brings us to this season. Okay. Next verse. Blessed are you, source of all, which brings our attention to miracles and ancestors from ages past that shine in this very moment. Verse 3, we celebrate the spirit of life, the wellspring of freedom and love, present with us, bringing us the power of our community to uphold the power and goodness of life. And finally, blessed are you, source of all, who brings awareness of holiness in our lives through the ritual of lighting the Hanukkah lights. All right, now you can form an arch in the middle aisle as the children come down the sides and then travel to their classroom. And to send them on their way, let us all sing our song. Okay? Oh, together to find meaning in the spirit of love that we share. Now go with each other to find meaning in the spirit of love that we share.
Now is the time for honoring and remembering, for sharing the events that have impacted us through the week. Stephanie Coe is here representing our caring team, the care team that helps coordinate our efforts to help one another, to be kind and helpful to one another. And in the next year, we're going to start doing some training with the care team to make sure that we're all on the same page about how to help people deal with things like alcohol addiction or violence or despair and worry. Remember, when you share only those things you've been given the permission to share. Remember to say your name first and then speak briefly, if possible, 1 or 2 sentences. I will go down. Well, the candle's already lit there in the center, so you can just come forward and light a candle as you desire. We will now listen to beautiful music, and as we listen to the music, those who wish to come forward and silently light a candle may also do so. One of the chants last night, based on an old poem, to go into the darkness with a light is to know the light. But to know the dark, go dark. Know the dark and learn that it blossoms. It too blossoms and sings and moves on dark feet and with dark wings. I invite you now to go into a time of silence in this room that is filled with light, the light of the Spirit. Go into the darkness. Be present, sorrow and fear and grief, and let the wholeness of this time, the complexity of this gathering of people, move you into the wholeness and the beauty that is all of life. In the silence together, let us be one. It was sad last night to have to choose between the chorale and the drumming. I'm glad I ended up with the drumming, but I'm sure I would have been very happy if I had chosen the other. Before the drumming, there was a lot of chanting, and one of the chants was based on some words by Baba Ram Dass. The freer I am, the higher I go. The higher I go, the more I see. The more I see, the less I know. The less I know, the freer I am. In classic UU style, listening to that chant, I had to consider what was really meant by the less I know. Is ignorance something? Ignorance can lead us to a feeling of freedom. But that's not really what Ram Dass was talking about. He was talking about clinging to our ideas and the ways in which we try to make the world conform to our ideas. He was trying to remind people not to cling to knowledge or feel all our security is in what we think. It is more in how we live, how we move, how we are. The idea of freedom includes this idea of spiritual liberation. Freedom from sin, from ignorance, from fear, from anxiety, from hatred, from delusion. Freedom. We seek all freedom. In Buddhist terms, freedom from suffering. The enslaved people of America often sang about freedom, especially freedom in a heaven. Because as long as they had hope, the possibilities could lift them above current circumstances. Filled the world, filled their own lives and minds and hearts with possibilities that were being countered and taken away every day. Likewise, spiritual ideal, to be in touch with your desires and feelings, is to be free from their control over your life and your actions. The spiritually free person is able to understand the moment as one part of a whole, and thus to act well in that moment. The freer you are, the higher you go. But freedom alone does not grant you wisdom. And more troubling, you cannot give freedom, that kind of spiritual freedom, to others. Today I'm talking about the gift of freedom and what we are able to give to one another as individuals and in societies are the conditions wherein people can choose to be free, the conditions in which people can open themselves to the power of spiritual freedom. As you should know by now, those of you who have been around here, I use the word spirituality to refer to what invokes our personal, individual sense of meaning and purpose, well-being. And then the word religion invokes how we share our spirituality with others. All these individuals who come together with drums and voices, and something in sharing the meaning and the power and the energy of that is religious to me. Because they're consciously seeking something and sharing. And this is what we do all the time across diversity and amidst diversity and in glory and celebration of diversity. We seek religiously, seek the wholeness. Freedom of religion is of incredible importance, incalculable importance, but it's often taken for granted by people in America. It has been established in our laws, the first nations to truly establish religious freedom in the way that we would live and work together. My guess is that the reason there are now so many people who say they are spiritual but not religious is because They've come to take for granted what it's like to live in a place where people are telling you what everyone must believe, places where everyone has to practice or at least act as if they say and think the same things, and that the unity is forced by law, by rule, by tradition, by convention. True freedom. When we have the freedom to find what is true and then share that openly with others, is of great power and joy, and we often take it for granted, for many of us have not lived, at least not recently, in places in which there was no freedom. The Jewish story of Hanukkah begins with people who are struggling with a complete lack of religious freedom. We do not know why Antiochus IV, who ruled the empire from 175 until his death, launched this massive campaign to repress the Jewish people. It began in 168 BC, so the numbers go the other direction, BCE. Becomes emperor in 75, but by 68 he's decided that these troublesome Jewish people, there's divisions there, he's trying to unify them, he wants to bring them under the Hellenistic ideals of tolerance and diversity, and so he forces it on the Jewish people. He takes away every ability to practice with violent threats. He had a statue of Zeus installed in the temple. He tried to force them all to engage in a sort of pagan Jewish synchronous cult religion. And this repression immediately triggered the revolt by a group of Jewish fighters, led by the Hammer. They all became known as the Hammer. It's interesting for me, who hates war and rejects violence as a means for creating community, to honor every year this story of a militaristic revolt and resistance. It's a small group of people. They did not have the power of an entire empire, and yet they still rose up and demanded their freedom, religious freedom. They didn't separate themselves completely from the empire. They simply wanted to be who they were and to practice their spirituality as they had been practicing for hundreds of years. I was thinking about this the other day when I was out driving my car, and I saw a guy standing on the corner of 5th Street and Miller with a big 3-foot-high sign that said, "Jesus Christ is the only Savior." And at first I thought, oh, religious freedom. This guy is practicing his freedom. He's totally free to enunciate his beliefs out in the open, and people are just driving by. But I kind of thought about engaging him in a conversation, but I didn't think that was going to go anywhere. So I started thinking about, what would it be like if he had the reins of government, if he was in charge of making laws? And would he, like so many people of a similar mindset before him, establish laws that said we all must be Christians, we all must practice, we all must affirm the singularity of the path to salvation, and spiritual wholeness and well-being? Started imagining, and it wasn't hard to imagine that. I have heard and engaged with and known people who want to force their beautiful, inspiring sense of what is true, force it on everyone else. And why not? If there's only one way to be truly liberated, there's only one way to be saved, then why should there be any other options? Let's just eliminate all those options. Even the people who don't believe in them are at least going to keep being reminded that they're supposed to be believing it. Religious freedom creates complexity. And some people are not comfortable with complexity. We can get mixed up when we talk about freedom and all the possibilities. There's always this tension between what is possible and what is good, and whether the two are equal or not. Came across a story a couple weeks back. British classroom in London. And a young boy raises his hand and asks a question of his teacher. He says, "Miss, my mum says that freedom is the most beautiful thing in the world. But what is freedom? What does it mean?" And the teacher, seeing the importance of this question, thinks quickly about how to respond. And then she, smiling sweetly, invites him up to the front of the class and hands him a dictionary. And she shows him how to find the right word in the dictionary. And then she says, "Go on, dear, give us the definition of freedom." And the boy pauses and reads out, "Freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever you feel like it, with total disregard for others, no matter the consequences, even if it causes destruction for you and those around you. And furthermore, freedom empowers you to say no whenever anyone tries to get you to do something you don't feel like doing." The teacher is shocked. The class is stunned and confused. The little boy bows his head in embarrassment, thinking of his mother loving this idea. Tears fill his eyes. To console the boy, the teacher goes over, puts her arm around the little boy. And then she happens to look at the cover of the dictionary, and suddenly she stands up and holds the book, and she says, "Don't worry, everyone. This dictionary is a dictionary of American English." Freedom is this very confusing thing. I have had conversations with friends from Canada to Europe about our obsession with freedom, including the freedom to not get vaccinated, to not wear masks, the freedom to say racist things whenever we feel like it, and the freedom to own and carry guns. The question is not, are we free? Freedom is a great thing. But what are we doing with that freedom? And how do we guide one another and hear one another and understand the impact of what we're doing with others? The Unitarian story, of course, fits slightly with the Jewish story in that moment of the Reformation in Christianity. 1500s rebellion against the fusion of religious and political authority grew in intensity. One branch of the Reformation was Unitarians, especially in Eastern Europe. King John Sigismund in 1568 hosts this debate between a Calvinist and a Unitarian theologian. And after the debate, King John, partially because of his mom having already been converted to Unitarianism, he also accepts the anti-Trinitarian ideas, which made him the only Unitarian monarch in history. And then he goes on to declare the Edict of Torda. In it, it reads, "His Majesty declares and reaffirms that in every place the preacher shall preach and explain the gospel according to his understanding of it," still male domination, of course. "And if the congregation likes it, it is well. And if not, no one shall compel them, for their souls would not be satisfied. No one shall compel them. They shall be permitted to keep the preacher whose teaching they approve, and none of the king's superintendents or any others shall abuse the preachers. No one shall be reviled for their religion by anyone, and it is not permitted that anyone should be threatened by anyone else with imprisonment or removal from their post or harm for their teaching." When the United States of America came to be, Thomas Jefferson knew of this edict. He knew of the demands for freedom and the whole movement of the Enlightenment that had led to this emphasis on the free mind, the free individual. And so he declared, first in Virginia and then in other ways in the United States Constitution, freedom of religion. And that grew, and Unitarian movement grew in this freedom and celebration of the ability of each individual to be free. I remember one embodiment of this idea was when I came into Unitarian Universalism. We were very proud of our About Your Sexuality curriculum. Because everywhere else, people, children, adults were being raised with no knowledge of really what was going on, no deep understanding, not empowered to make choices. They were told what they were supposed to do with their relationships and their sexuality, and no ability to make decisions, especially people who were transgender or gay, or no freedom. And so we were encouraging people to find, through knowledge, their own individual freedom. But we realized that there was a serious flaw with that curriculum. It did not give people guidance in terms of ethics and relationships. And so we worked with the United Church of Christ, and we rewrote our curriculum to still give people, empower people with knowledge, the freedom to make choices about their lives. But we made sure that we were giving them knowledge about relationships, about abuse, sexual abuse especially, that had not been mentioned in the earlier curriculum. We talked about how to form loving and powerful relationships and encourage people to choose that. Today, our National Statement of Principles talks about the use of inclusive and democratic processes to make decisions in all human societies. Speak of diversity. It says we covenant, not just we want there to be a lot of diversity, but we covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And we embrace our differences and commonalities with love and curiosity and respect. So it is not enough to be free. It is free to use love to its greatest extent. We are free to use our curiosity to the way it leads us to the core and heart of the darkness as well as the light. We are free to use respect in listening to one another and sharing what is in our heart and in our experience. Though we have freedom, we also have covenants and values that we share to guide us in that freedom. The promises that focus our actuality and practice. So the gift of freedom requires that it come along with knowledge and information and community and care and love and guidance. And then when a person makes a choice, they can make the best choice possible. The freedom must always be tempered by your promise to affirm the inherent worth and dignity even of those who disagree with you about the ultimate truth. So that's why we've gathered, to give each other the gift of freedom and really to remind the world over and over again how valuable it is not only to be free, but to be in community with that freedom. And because this congregation is essential in protecting religious freedom in this valley, we invite you now to support the congregation in whatever way you can.
Yes. Well, it's time for the offertory. The offertory is an ancient element of worship. The act of giving, regardless of amount, is a spiritual practice that expresses our thankfulness and generosity. We live these values and abundance. Joyfully sharing our gifts and strengths in service to the greater good is one way we create beloved community. Thank you to all of you who are donating and continue to pay your pledges in these uncertain times. We are blessed by your generosity. May your gifts make a difference in our communities, local and global, through the ministries of this fellowship. Now, rise in body and spirit to sing hymn number 245, Joy to the World.
As always, when we light a menorah, we do not say only the Jewish words, but we rewrite them and interpret them as by Unitarians. And so this song also slightly rewritten and reinterpreted by Unitarians. As we go forth from this time with all this music and words and ideas in our hearts, let's be aware that each day is the time between sunrise and sunset will be 1 minute longer. Let that be a reminder of the growing love and possibilities, the growing freedom in our heart, spiritual liberation that we all seek. And may we be blessed knowing that we are not traveling alone, but traveling together.
All right, we repeat the extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and ever in our lives until we are together again. Okay. We invite everybody to come up, make a circle, and we'll sing our closing song.